Can you guess the problem? And welcome to another Bodgit and Leggit video. Now we have a 2005 Peugeot Expert. It's the same as the Citroen, and we are having an issue with the clutch. Now it's not a completely gone clutch like you kind of know when a clutch is gone because it just revs up and doesn't go anywhere. This one actually does move, but it only slips at certain times. Now I think in this particular case we've more got a problem with the pressure plate than the clutch. Now obviously we're going to replace everything, but I think in this particular case it's the pressure plate giving more issues than the clutch. I'm trying to make it slip now and I can't. You saw at the beginning of the video it was slipping like crazy, and now I can't really make it slip. There we go, it's doing it now. There we go, now it's slipping. Foot's welded down, just revving up, not going anywhere. So let's get it to the shed and let's sort this bad boy out. Doing a clutch on the floor, don't you just love it? Right, we are back at the shed, and if your eagle-eyed viewers among us can see a few issues already. Obviously there was some sort of overheating issue there, but nothing to do with me. It's not doing it now. I'm just here to do the clutch, and it looks like the intake there is missing, but again, nothing to do with me, because I know people like to point out things when you're doing a video because they either think you haven't spotted them or they've just spotted them themselves. So at the end of the day, that's nothing to do with me. We're just doing the clutch, but everything, that's an old issue. That's obviously, it's not great, but it's still working. So yeah, what we have to do is this bad boy. Now, the subframe, don't know yet. I might get away without having to drop it. We will see. If I was on the lift, I definitely think I could get away without completely dropping it. Maybe just loosening it a little bit. But when you're on the floor, you need to make your life a lot easier. So I might have to drop the subframe, which is just hassle, but it is what it is. Oh, what's that? Haha, score! Someone's left their stubby screwdriver there. Mine. Finders keepers. Lovely. What I'm going to do first is take out the airbox, take out the battery. Actually, now I need to leave the battery in there because I'm charging a few things. I haven't got any power in the shed at the minute, so I'm charging torches and stuff from the cigarette lighter. But so I'm going to take everything off that I can, just so the dog can see the rabbit a lot better and see just how much room we've got and what else we need to take off. So not going to film taking all this off because it's just going to be some clips, some dewberry clips, some like plastic clips to get this off, and then we can see what the story is. Sorted. So again, I'm working on the floor, so what I want to do is I want to try and do all the top work first before I lift up the car and go underneath, because when you lift up the car, you are lifting up, it's making it awkward to get your hands down and stuff. So the more work I can do without lifting it up first and get all the stuff off the top, then I lift it up and just do the bottom stuff. It just kind of makes a lot more sense. When you're on a lift, it doesn't really matter. But when I'm doing it like this, it just makes my life a lot easier. Now, I removed the airbox, just a dewberry clip at the intake, another dewberry clip at the airbox, take out that section. One plastic clip here, just push back and the airbox comes out, and then just remove the map sensor there, and it's all good. Now, we can see, we don't actually have to remove the battery in this case because the gearbox mount is over to the side of it, but we can see some of the top bolts fairly handy, which is good, and the gear linkages are a little bit awkward. They're kind of right down in there, but again, we'll get them off. And I had a quick look underneath this, and it looks like the rear main seal is leaking as well, so we're going to replace that. It's just I'm not sure about the subframe at the minute. You can see it looks fairly rusty, and the less bolts I have to take out, especially on subframes and stuff like that, the better, because if one of them bolts break, you're in a lot of trouble. It makes a hard job into an absolute nightmare. So yeah, the less stuff I have to take off, the better, especially when it comes to rusty bolts, and especially when it comes to bolts on a subframe that are, you know, inside the unibody itself. So if the bolts broke, you'd have to start cutting holes in the floor and welding new stuff. You know, it's just a big job. It's a nightmare you really don't want to be facing. I see there's some oil there too. Wonder where that's from. This looks like it's had a lot of work, so maybe these are all old problems, but again, they're not my problem in this case. So all I'm going to do is, you can see this, so there's 1, 2, there's the, well, look at that, the crank sensor. There's no wires to it. What? Oh, there is. They're just folded back, I was going to say. So we moved the cam sensor there, and or the crank sensor, sorry, a couple of bolts there, one there, starter motor bolts down there, Allen keys for the slave cylinder, for the clutch, and then the gear linkages. Again, so there's no point me showing you undoing these bolts because you can clearly see them. Some of them are easy, some of them are awkward. Once we get them off, we'll turn the camera back on. Right, I had a mixture of 17mm bolts and 16mm bolts. The 17mm bolts were the one on the starter motor, and as you can see, the starter motor, where is it? Kind of see there, it looks really fairly new. So someone's obviously changed the bolts. These are just 8.8, these are just mild steel bolts, but anyway, it doesn't matter. And then the standard proper bolts are 16mm. So we've got all the bolts off on the top and kind of the side. Now what I need to do is take the reversing light switch off, take the other sensor off just at the back, and the gear linkages. Now with the gear linkages, it's always easier, if possible, to remove the whole gear linkages mount. You see how it's just bolted on here, because sometimes when you try and take off these clips, which are right down there, some of them can just be old and they can break, and it just causes all sorts of problems. So if you can, it's always best to unbolt the gear linkages rather than trying to unclip it. Some of these plastic clips are a nightmare. Sometimes they have a metal clip in there, not too bad, but the plastic ones that you kind of have to twist and get lined up, they can just break, and then you need new gear linkages because it won't change gear properly and all the usual stuff that goes along with it. It's just a nightmare. But if you can't do it, obviously undo the clips, but just be careful of the clips. Also, we need to be careful, we've got an earth strap down there too, so remember that. And we're close to jacking this up and doing stuff from the bottom. Right, I forgot to say the Allen key was a 6mm for the clutch cylinder down there. Now I've managed to undo the gear linkages, 3 13mm bolts, and as you can see now it's completely free. Now I did have to release it from here. These aren't the problem. It's the clips right at the back that's the problem, and all you do to release that is press down that button there and lever that up, and that will come off that ball. And the same, see that ball sticking out there, that one where my finger is right there, and I've just got a lever bar off this piece of metal here and just levered it off. Now that's completely free, and I haven't had to disconnect the clips at the back of it, because like I said, you can believe me, you can break them so easy, especially on an old vehicle. It's always easier, even if you have to struggle to take the actual bracket off, believe me, it's always easier to take the bracket off. Right, I think that's more or less everything I can do from the top. There's always going to be certain things you miss, but definitely got most of them off, or most of the stuff off. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jack it up. Before you jack it up, make sure, especially when you're on the floor, you can just see I've got some chocks there on both wheels. I'm going to jack this up as high as I can, and 2 axle stands on, but we have to be careful not to put the axle stands on the subframe, because obviously we might be having to remove the subframe, so I have to find a new place to put them that's not gonna hinder me on the subframe. So once I do that, we'll turn the camera back on and I'll show you how I've done it. Right in the background you can see the 2 chocks, and in the foreground you can see the 2 axle stands on the frame of the actual van, way out the way of the subframe. And when I actually look at it properly, now I did see this, look at this, someone's repaired the sump with that checker plate stuff, and they've done a really good job, and they've repaired it there as well. But I can't help in thinking it still would have been cheaper to replace the sump, because you'd have to have taken that off to get that work done, and that sort of welding isn't cheap. But anyway, now gearbox drive shaft seal. so we will replace that. But what I'm thinking is, because of the height we've got between the clutch or the gearbox and the subframe, I'm thinking I'm just going to be able to hopefully undo the bolts and slide the gearbox to the side, rest it on the subframe, and then get my hand in and actually replace the clutch. And that will save me a hell of a lot of work. And as you can see just how rusty this subframe is, I don't know how easy it will come down. The back bolts are okay, but these bolts here look very, very bad. So I'm going to give that a try first. Worst case scenario, I just have to take the subframe off. But hey, we're going to give it a try, because at the end of the day, this is how, you know, you guys will be doing it on the floor. And if I can save myself 3 or 4 hours work, well, why wouldn't I? I don't mind struggling to try and line up the gearbox or the clutch for half an hour, because it will still save me hours upon hours of time. So what I'm going to do now is take off the wheel, take off the 2 shock bolts there, disconnect the drive shaft. Before I do that, I'm going to drain, here we go, I'm going to drain out the gearbox oil if there's any left. And yeah, we'll get to it then. Sorted. Okay, we've removed the sun plug. It's an S9 square to actually remove it, or sorry, the gearbox plug. And yeah, not a lot of oil in it, not enough, so it was all leaking out. But we will repair the seal, and we will also repair the or put more oil in, sorry. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to remove the cover here, the dust plate cover, and remove the wheel. And like I said, take out the 2 bolts for the shock, remove the drive shaft, and then we will remove the rest of the bolts on the gearbox. Sorted. Right, it was 2 18mm nuts and bolts that hold the actual shock to the hub. And to take the drive shaft out, you need a thinned wall 36mm. And what you can see is, you can see how this has been machined away to actually fit inside the hub and still take the actual bolt off. This one is made by Top Tool. And yeah, 36mm thin walled socket. Impact. Sorted. Oh yeah, and we'll just bang it off while you're watching me. Lovely. That's one drive shaft out. I put that back there so there's no pressure on any of the pipes or anything. And as you can see, one drive shaft removed. Boom. Sorted. Now to do the last few bolts underneath. Again, I'm not going to film it because it's just a couple of bolts underneath the dust shield. And yeah, sorted. Right, I've taken off the engine mount. We've had an 18mm nut, 2 18mm bolts, and a 13mm nut and bolt. Here, take the engine mount off, or the gearbox mount, which is there. So technically now, hopefully, and I say hopefully, we've got enough room now. I can hopefully move the gearbox back enough to actually open it up enough just to be able to get the clutch in. The clutch is going to be easy to get in. It's getting the clutch alignment tool in at the same time. That's where you need a little bit more room. Hopefully we can do that. Hopefully there's enough room. If not, we are going to have to undo the subframe. Underneath, I have a jack on the engine, which I can obviously lift up and down, and I'm going to have a jack there, you can just see it, on the gearbox. So I'm going to get to this side of the car now, and I'm going to kind of push the gearbox out this way. It's going to then sit on the jack, and I'm going to slide it as much as I can inside the subframe, and hopefully that will give us enough room under there. Now hopefully you're going to be able to see this. I don't know how well it's going to work, but I've got everything supported on jacks, and let's just see if we can get this gearbox. Now this piece of wood is stopping me. You can see hopefully what I'm doing. We got the gearbox split. I haven't removed the drive shaft, so in other words the drive shaft is still in. It's going to slide out once I slide out the gearbox, and hopefully we've got enough room in there to put the new clutch in. We don't need a lot more room, but hopefully between there we've got enough room. So let me just remove all this jack and blocks and everything and get it in a better place. As you can see, I've wedged a piece of wood between the subframe. It's not touching the gearbox, but it's sticking out past the gearbox. So when the gearbox falls a little bit, that piece of wood will hold it, and it'll just allow me then hopefully to kind of manhandle it out the way. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. If the camera's not in the right position, hopefully it is. What I might do is I can't see the camera and I can't see if I'm getting the right position. But all I'm going to do is, no point me filming if you can't see what's going on. I'm just going to push the gearbox back a little bit more. Once I kind of get it to a position where I think I can do it, I'll turn the camera back on. Right people, great news. Look at that. There's loads and loads of room. It might not look like it, but there is loads of room in there now to take the clutch off, to get my centering tool in and absolutely everything. It does kind of look like the rear main seal is leaking. If it is, it kind of looks that way. I thought it was, but then I know the gearbox is leaking as well. But we'll check it out, and if it is, I'm going to do a separate video because I've got a couple of little tips and tricks on how to actually do that. Because some of them can be a nightmare when you're pushing the seal in. So I want to do like a separate kind of a video, so just to show people how to do that rather than kind of going through all this video. What I'm going to do next is just remove the clutch and the pressure plate, and we'll see what sort of condition it's in. Sorted. And I know I'm going to get grief for doing it this way because it's just hilarious. If I do it this way, I'm going to get grief. If I do it the other way, I'm going to get grief. And it's the same people that say, no, you have to put the, you have to do this, you have to do that. And when I do it their way, they still moan that I have to do it the other way. I haven't taken out the drive shaft. In the sense of it's still in the car. I haven't dropped the subframe, but as you can see, you don't have to. Yes. Is it more awkward for me to put the clutch on? Well, yeah, 100%. If I was on the lift, would I do it this way? Well, no. Unless the bolts, and even though these bolts do look really bad, if all the bolts were really rusty, then yes, I would always be doing it this way. But when the bolts don't look too bad, I would be taking the subframe off. But again, it causes other issues because are your bolts okay? You know, wishbones have to come off. Steering rack has to come off, and all them bolts could potentially break or have another thing. So at least doing it this way, yes, it's more awkward, but it's 100% doable. And I'm lying on my back and it's still 100% doable. So let's just get the bolts off and see what condition the clutch is in. Got the clutch out. I've obviously now got to spend time cleaning everything, getting everything nice and clean. We have the pressure plate. And you can see the discoloration on the outside compared to the inside. And then when I get to the clutch, look how much play the centre has got in it. I mean, I get this way. It's really, really bad. I can do it a lot easier with two hands, but it's just, look, I mean, completely loads of play. All the springs are all noising. So that clutch, I think, is doing this and only kind of catching on the outside, as you can see, because the clutch itself is good. As regards the meat on the clutch is meaty. So it's not like the clutch is completely gone. Like I even said at the beginning of the video, it's a weird slip. It was almost like an intermittent slip, if that makes sense. It wasn't slipping all the time. That's why I was kind of thinking maybe there's an issue with the pressure plate. But yeah, anyway, we're going to have to get a new clutch, take off the flywheel, see if the main seal is gone, and then go from there. Sorted. Right, as you can see, the rear main oil seal is leaking. The sump is leaking, and that's certainly not helping the clutch. So I said that at the beginning, but then I kind of looked at it a little bit more and I thought it was the gearbox. Well, it is the gearbox seal leaking. That is leaking. The rear main oil seal leaking. The sump is leaking. Everything on this is leaking. And because the sump is leaking right here, that's not helping. That's not helping matters either, because it's hitting the flywheel and spinning all inside the flywheel as well. So I've now got to clean all this. Get all nice and clean, ready for the new parts to go on. Sorted. This happens sometimes when you're doing a job. The job just evolves, and this job is evolving quite rapidly. It was just kind of the clutch, even though when I did say at the beginning, it didn't. I thought it was the pressure plate because it was kind of like an intermittent kind of slipping, if that makes sense. But it was the actual clutch plate, but not the material, as you can see, with all the wear that was in it, but also all the oil that's kind of soaked into it. That hasn't helped as well. We've got a sump leaking, we've got all the seals and the gearbox leaking, the rear main seal, it's all clean now, as you can see. Hopefully you can see that I've got it all cleaned. I've got the gearbox all cleaned, and just waiting for the new parts. I'm going to have to stick them all in, obviously. I'm going to have to take the sump off, new oil and filter, reseal the sump, because if I don't, we're just going to get back to the same situation very soon of this new clutch getting destroyed because of all the oil. And we'll finally get on top of some of this oil leak. Now the steering rack is leaking, we've got more leaks up here. Every single part of this is leaking. Everywhere it physically can leak, it's leaking. So yeah, the joys of cars. So once I get everything, we will continue. Sorted. All our new bits, our new clutch, pressure plate, bearing, our new seal, everything is there. Now I've done loads of videos because it's just going to be awkward showing this, how to you know, square up a clutch, make sure it's centered and stuff like that. You can see from our old one just how bad and worn this was in the middle, just how much movement this is compared to this one, which is obviously nothing. So we're going to stick all that back on, and if you want to know how to center up other clutches, just go onto my other videos and I'll show you. It's just because of the room I've got, the time and everything, I'm just going to struggle. I'm going to get out this seal, get a rubber hammer and just put this back in. You just be very careful with the girdle spring that doesn't pop off, because it will start leaking oil then. And once I got all that done, we'll turn the camera back on. Right, we have our new seal on. I've done a video on how to actually install it with a few little tips and tricks, so you go and check it out. It's a separate video. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stick the flywheel and the clutch on. Like I said, I'm not going to really show that because I've already done videos on that. And it's, like I said, it's awkward because of how we're actually doing it with the gearbox still in place. So there we go. Make sure that's all nicely sealed. It's pushed down far enough. It's not going to cause any issues. Make sure there's no bits of crap or you've dinted or you've creased anything, and then you're ready to put your flywheel back on. Right, I know you can't really see it properly, but we have the new clutch in place. I can just take out my centering tool, hopefully. Can I do it on camera? You see what I'm doing? There we go. Clutch centering tool is out, and I just need to tighten up this, but it's in. So there we go. Sorted. Just going to drop down the gearbox now, and hopefully it all lines up. Hopefully the clutch is still centered. There's always a dodgy possibility it isn't. You can't really quite see. Let's see if I can get the camera in. Can we see with the camera? Now, can you tell me, people, is that clutch centered? Let me know. Put it in the comments. Right, I don't know if I can get it directly in the middle. If it doesn't look centered, it's because maybe I haven't got it in the middle, but we'll know in about half an hour whether it is or not. Right, I'm going to try and get this gearbox in from underneath now. Wow, it's got in. Yeah, it's going in. The drive shaft's lining up. Oh wow, awesome. Now we're a bit stuck for some reason. Don't know what we're stuck on. Can you see anything at the top? We're stuck on? No. It's in place because I felt it go in. It just needs to go another inch. 25 mil. Oh, wow, that's gone home now, which is good. Whew. Alright, so just a bit more wiggling. There's no point of filming it. Can you see me? Hello. Bit more wiggling, and this should be home. Sorted. Right, great news, people. It's in, and that means now we've got the clutch lined up perfectly. The other good bit of news is the drive shaft is in. What I had to do is it moved in quite a bit, but then I couldn't get it in any further, so I got Sean to spin the driver's side wheel, and it just fell into place. Literally just fell into place. So it was the drive shaft that was holding me back. But now the drive shaft's in, the gearbox in, so that also means that our clutch is centered, which is awesome. So we're going to screw the bolts back on. Again, there's no point me showing you that. Screw the bolts back on, and yeah, we need to see if this thing actually works after this. Sorted. We got the clutch in. Clutch feels good. Got the engine mount on. I just need to lift it up a little bit more and screw in the top. And all the bolts are in, and I've got to do the gear linkage. But next thing we're going to do is fill the gearbox. Now the filler is right there. I've also got to replace the oil seal there, but I'm going to do that now because I've got new seals for the gearbox. But that's the filler there. So we're going to put the drive shaft in, change the seal, and fill the gearbox full of oil. Sorted. Right, see, this is why it's always not a good idea to remove everything if you don't have to. Look at that subframe. I mean, that is a DOE fail. He's going to have to replace that. But just look how bad that is. It's not good. That's why I didn't want to remove everything, because when you've got metal that's rusty, you can bet your life that the bolts are rusty. But that is very, very dangerous. Right, hopefully you can hear me over the squealing. This has been running for a while now. No sign of leaks. I've done all the other work to it. It's looking good, which is absolutely awesome. I can put the cover back on now. I just wanted to make sure there was no leaks before I put the actual cover back on there. But at the minute, we're looking good. First thing, foot on the clutch. Just check all the gears that it goes into, and that's all good. Now we'll actually start it again. So it starts. Okay. Does it go into all the gears? Yeah, my foot's on the clutch still, so that's good. And reverse. There we go. So that's obviously a good sign. Now let's see how quick the clutch bites. Straight away, the clutch is biting straight away, which is really, really good. Handbrake off. Boom, look at that. There we go. Sorted. Let me take this for a test drive and see what it's like. Right, we are all good. It's a good example, this, just to go to show you that your clutch doesn't need to be worn. Like I said, it was almost like an intermittent kind of a slip, which is obviously kind of impossible with a clutch, but you know what I mean. But you can see all the oil that was in the clutch. You could see that the center shaft of the clutch was completely gone, so the clutch just wasn't biting on all, you know, it was kind of biting like on half of it because it was essentially just doing this. But as you can see now, it's absolutely perfect. So that's it. Your clutch doesn't have to be completely gone for it to be gone, if that makes sense. So look, hope it helps. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Don't forget, links up here, links down below, but most importantly, don't forget, get your hands dirty. See you for the next one. Sorted. Bit of bonus footage. Look how nice and clean it is under here now. No leaks, no nothing. It's all been sealed. All the new seals have been put in. All the seals have been done. It's beautiful. Boom, sorted. Look at that welding. Like I said, that's some nice welding.